Hello, Lynn.
Good
I'm very
morning.
excited to talk to you. It is good evening here and
Yes,
good morning there. Uh, I am in Tel Aviv, and where are you?
I'm in the Northern Virginia near Washington, D.C.
Wow, this technology makes it so beautiful to be able
It
to connect.
does.
So I would like to tell our viewers, our audience, that Lynn and myself have been friends for many, many years. We are colleagues. We are interested in similar topics. She will tell you more about herself in a minute. It is a special honor today to have her with us because her story is very relevant to what we are now facing in the Middle East. So, Lynn, thank you so much for joining me. And let's just start by asking you to tell the audience who you are, Lynne Schneider.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I look forward to sharing my experiences and figuring out how we can collaborate in the future as well to bring peace and stabilization to not just the Middle East, but the other environments that are on fire today. My background is basically I'm a retired Colonel Reserve from the Army Reserve, and I spent about 35 years in the military. Started out with an enlisted career, and then shifted to I became an officer in 1991, and I joined the civil affairs community, which is all about stabilization, governance, economic development, because it was natural for me as it flowed from the knowledge environment, knowledge economics, knowledge management communities that we had all been part of since the late 80s, early 90s. So that was really a natural shift. um, I like working with people. That was the important thing also for me. Lots of school, lots of training. Then my background, my civilian background is I worked in the Pentagon for off and on for many years. I worked for 3 different presidents and sat on several different boards advising the Secretary of Defense over those years. I'm also retired from civil service as well. And lastly, I've had my own consulting companies in and out, not while I was deployed, of course, but other during other opportune times. So that's just a brief background. I deployed to Iraq in 2004, right after the uh, start of the war there. I volunteered to go. I felt that all the training that I had had was something that I wanted to apply in real life. And so I asked to deploy. So I was in Iraq 2004, end of 2004 to the almost the September of 2005. And I was a combatant soldier on the ground I had a civil affairs team of 9 people plus 3 gunners. So we would have our up armored Humvees. We'd go outside the wire every single day. What we assumed was that there was a grand plan for Iraq, and later come to find out there really wasn't. I'm not sure if they didn't think it was going to take as long as it did, but the complexity, what they discovered was the complexity of the situation. It didn't just layer different tribes, it layered different faiths, it layered different countries. So there was a lot going on there, that really the complexity didn't get sorted out until General Petraeus took over in 2000 and end of 2006 when we had the surge. So the experience on the ground was quite interesting. I never knew if I was going to come home every day when I left my little space that I would sleep in. We had, plans for the day. They were coordinated with upper echelons. We'd go outside the wire. We'd spend the day either working with local communities in the education world. We would apply governance strategies, working with the different districts, district leadership. We would have simple things that we did to try to calm the communities, like work with the children, have medical clinics. We would hand out backpacks to kids with school supplies. We would paint schools, we would refurbish schools. There was several experiences that were very challenging. We went to one school. I worked in the first period of my time in Iraq in what's called the Triangle of Death, which is the southern part of Baghdad and then the south. And we would go out into these communities, and these schools were horrid. The bathrooms were, of course, there's a hole in the ground where they went to the bathroom. There was no running clean water. The bathrooms were absolutely filthy. So we would provide support to have people come in and clean the local. We would hire local populations so they would have economic, they would have income, and we would do little things like that all the way up to big things. So the largest project I worked on the first time was trying to figure out how we built a strategy for our area and then how that would fit into a bigger picture strategy. So there were other people looking at sewer systems and all different kinds of things that needed to be fixed. What we discovered was when we went into the communities that, of course, the bombings and the tanks and all the different things that happen in a war, we discovered that they had buried their water lines next to their sewage lines, next to their gasoline lines, all in the same hole. Well, you can't, the same pit. You can't do that, obviously. So we had to work to figure that out. I worked quite a bit with the senior leadership that was put in place under the first governance structure in the temporary governance structure. And then I'll stop after this and see if you have any questions, but there were, in January of 2005, we had the first official election, and that was quite a challenge as well. I was the only female senior officer on the team. So when we put the wires up around the schools, and we had a scanning and a security area before people could go and vote. And I had a scanner, a body scanner, and all the women who were coming to vote went through my lines over 4 hours, 4.5 hours, maybe longer. I don't even remember anymore. I was scanning the women, so up and down, and that was quite taxing. There were silly things which I can talk about later, but one of the things that struck me was that some of these people walked 3 and 4 miles to vote. Older ladies were being pushed on bicycles by their grandchildren to go vote. So it was quite interesting to see that kind of a push for their ability to vote for their own leadership. So.
Wow. I have many questions,
Okay.
but let's start with the big one. In retrospect, do you think that it was naive to believe that you can introduce democracy to Iraq?
I would say it wasn't naive to think that we could introduce democracy. I think that they tried to do it too quickly, and there was no building of the support amongst all the different elements that were involved, which later came in the surge. But before that, it was impossible. And the other thing is that they disbanded the Ba'ath Party. Well, the Ba'ath Party was all of your military, right? They disbanded. Those people had no work, they had no income. So it was natural for them to migrate to who was going to pay them, and that was Iran. And so you had all these challenges, that were overlooked or missed or assumed by good people who thought they were doing the right thing.
So were the things that you taught them, the infrastructure, the governance, all of that, was it sustainable? Do you know if it is still there?
Not until later. So the first push was all, I was more like trying to get funds in there to build the economy, to stabilize people's lives, to figure out where the bad guys were, all of the Al Qaeda and the push for the weapons and the bombs that were coming in, trying to figure out where all this was. There were, I think, for the military, there were lessons learned in, you can't put the same strategy into every single situation, right? So you had a strategy where people would, like, even in our own rank and file, we had civil affairs, we had psyops, we had the intelligence community. And the intelligence community wouldn't accept anything from anybody else unless it came through intelligence channels. And we were saying, but we're out there with the people. We're out there with the people, and they don't want this to happen in their communities, and they're telling us things. In one instance, we had near the refinery, where we had gone through the community to look for, to talk to people and to find out what their needs were. But we also had the military, the cavalry was there too, the First Cavalry Division, and so we had conversations, and people were scared to talk, and we couldn't figure out what was really going on. And so as I got towards the end of the area that we were in, some lady came running up behind a wall. And while I was talking to one lady, the other lady was telling me all about where the bad guys were, where they were hiding, where they were making bombs, where they were, and why the community was scared, but she couldn't show her face because she couldn't show that she was talking to me. We relayed this information back through the proper channels, and they ignored it. And later they found out that what she was saying was accurate, but we had already had things happen, right? So there's an internal challenge that's, I think, is being overcome now. But in the beginning, everybody was in their structure, their structure, their lanes, if you were, and collaboration was a little bit of a challenge. People tried. I wouldn't say they didn't try, but in the end, leadership makes the final decision on what gets accepted and what doesn't get accepted. So in 2003 and 4 and 5, there was a lot of learning on the ground, which is not the place you want to do it. And I think that happens a lot. I don't blame anybody or say anything's bad or good, but it happens in different environments, even when a business is growing, right? So a new business has times that they're learning as well. So in 2006, of course, they called me back. They asked me to come back. I was like, no, I just got home and I have all my arms and legs, and I want to spend time with my mom and my brothers and sisters, but they called me back. So I redeployed. I got specifically called to help with the surge planning in Baghdad, and did all the civil affairs collaboration. Now, there was a civil affairs team, a G9 team, that did a lot of the planning and coordination. And then I would bring their ideas, or I would take the ideas from the collaborative group that we had, run under Colonel Doug Ollivant, who was doing the planning, who was doing the synchronizing of all the different elements, fires, civil affairs, psyops, all the different pieces and parts of the military. And he would feed that up to General Petraeus's staff, and then he would get direction. So in that time frame is when we really had the opportunity to really push for internal collaboration and external collaboration. So the same people that I knew, the Iraqis that were there in 2004-5, were obviously still there in 2006 and 7. And we were able to work with some of those people because they were running the district. So Baghdad's broken up into 9 different districts, and each district had its own community, its own purpose, its own grouping. And some of the things that we discovered were that the people that were doing the governance in these different districts, district governance communities, wanted help. And they wanted, one of the things that I learned as a civil affairs officer was that you really want the communities to take the lead, right? You don't want to be telling them what to do because they're educated and they have their own ideas, right? And they know their people. So we built a strategy. As the surge strategy was being built, we built another layer underneath, which was a community plan. So there was a Al Rashid district strategy, there was a, Al Mansour strategy, so on. And the communities actually took possession of that planning. They took responsibility. And the community we would create the questions with the community leadership so that during the day, they could go out and the local ladies could ask people in their apartment buildings and whatever their little communities were, they could gather this information. Then we'd bring it back. Then at night, our night was US day. So we would send this information. There was a company in Boston that would synchronize the information, and then send us back the results. We did this every week, right? So, but anyway, the surge then went on. We had a lot of challenges in that time frame, working with the so the first big challenge, of course, was sewage, right? I mean, this was a huge problem. And the group that was leading that was building it from the top down instead of the bottom up. And when you do that kind of planning, you have to start at the bottom because you don't want, if you fix the top, then the sewage runs into where everything's broken and just spreads out. And we would walk through 2 feet of sewage in the streets. I don't know how people lived in this environment. In some places, it was really bad. So then we got with the university, and when the university said, well, we have all the plans for the sewage infrastructure, let us help you. So it was a different kind of a relationship with the community during the surge in 2007, working with local community leadership, the university professors, I don't want to make like it was all great, but it was much, 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 much better. And then I left. They executed, throughout 2007, and then you saw that things got much better in Iraq. The mistake that the next administration made was pulling out to get out of Iraq, to get away from the situation without a plan for them to be able to withdraw slowly, to hand things over in a reasonable fashion. Of course, then you saw the bombings so then Iran came in and filled in, and we got this huge surge with ISIS, which was horrific, absolutely horrific. In that time frame, though, I did have people come over after ISIS was. This was before. So right after the surge, when I was back in Washington D.C. towards the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, and I can't remember the exact date, but I got this phone call from, hi, Lynn, this is so-and-so. I'm in Washington, D.C. I was like, what? So these are the people that were doing the governance work, right? So they said, yeah, we're here. We're in Washington. It's evening. We came for 1 week of classes with the State Department, but we have nothing to do in the evening. I was like, oh my gosh, what a great opportunity. So I went down to D.C. with another person, and we visited with these people. We showed them where to go to. We all went to dinner together. We showed them where the ATMs were, simple things like that. And then we started talking about the planning that we had instituted by these different communities. And they were like, oh yeah, because they had dreams, right? People have dreams. They had dreams of reconstituting their shopping malls that they had. They had, all different kinds of ideas. And here they had executed a lot of these things that we were working on. So they believed enough to go forward to do this work. We gave them all kinds of tools. I used a bunch of things from the knowledge community, provided them all kinds of information, which I was so grateful to have. And we then, after the week was done, they went back home, and then we had the ISIS crash. So many of those people, I don't know where they are today. I tried to find some. I was able to find some of them when I went back I went back as a senior civilian in 2010 in the southern part of Iraq. And I don't know, some of those people I'm still friends with and I talk to all the time, and they still have dreams and hopes and building business centers and doing economic development. And I guess my point is that you can do all the planning that you want to. You've got to bring in the community. And I think the one thing that we provided in the very beginning was hope, and then they lost hope, right? And then we came back again and we gave them more hope. So right now they're kind of in a in a in a space where they are still trying to figure things out. So it's been more than 20 years, right? And the more that we interfere in telling them what to do as far as building their communities, I think the less influence that we have. When you talk about what happened in the southern part of Iraq, in Basra and that region concerning, um, you know, concerning working with the tribes, what people have to remember is the history. And the history of that world is that there's a fake line in the sand. It's called the line, Kuwait and Iraq, right? There's a line. You have to go all the way back to like 1914, 1912, 19, and you have to look at people who were there that were actually working with the tribes, right? And one of those people was Gertrude Bell. She was an amazing woman. She wrote back to her father every single day of her experiences when she went out to meet with the tribal leaders, and she was also gathering information. And then we in 1916, of course, we had the Paris peace talks, and she was the only. If you look at the photograph, she was the only woman in that group, and she told that group, if you divide these countries up this way, you're going to have trouble for over 100 years. And boy, was she right, huh? So we're still suffering the consequences of that, because you have a huge tribe that's half in Kuwait, half in Iraq. Part of it was scattered into Saudi Arabia. So you've got all these different complexities that were created that we try to deal with it ourselves using, dime, the diplomacy, information, military, and economics. But we're not thinking it. We're thinking it through it from a perspective. In my own, this is my opinion. I might be wrong, but we're thinking it from a perspective of, a democracy. You have to talk with those people. Is that the kind of governance structure that you want? Is that the kind of governance structure that you need? Right? And or are there pieces and parts that can be utilized and other pieces and parts are different? I mean, I can pick up the phone. I'll just tell you one story quickly. I was helping with getting people out of Afghanistan after the 15th of August 2021. And I called a friend of mine in Kuwait who is a tribal leader, but he's also a businessman. He worked in the the Ministry of Defense as a logistics expert and contracting expert, and he's retired now. But he's the one who said, "Lynn, half of my tribe is in Iraq, right?" So they cross these different lines, but he has really close friends in Saudi Arabia, right? So I called him and I said, "I don't know what to do. This young gal is stuck outside the gate. Her mother has her passport. She was put on a plane and sent to the States. Or to Qatar. She filed that she has a missing daughter who has mentally incapacitated. And they left her sit outside this gate, and somehow, and I don't remember how, her cousin ended up there. Her family called me. I don't know how they got my name, but we ended up, it was really frustrating. And towards the very end, there was no way for me to get her out. And we begged, right? We had all kinds of calls. That's a whole other story. But I called my friend in Kuwait and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm just stuck. I'm just devastated. She's there, has no help. She doesn't have a cell phone because she doesn't know how to use one. She's 28 years old, but she has a mental capacity of a 5-year-old. I desperately need help. He says, give me a minute. Now, this is in Afghanistan, right? I get called by some guy who's living in Dubai, but he's a tribal leader is a big business in Dubai, but he's a tribal leader in Afghanistan. Oh, he says, I'll take care of it. Tell them to be here and be ready. So they went and picked these two up, like on one of the last nights that we were there in the country, and drove them down through Kandahar and through Spin Boldak and up to Islamabad. And then her family took care of them. And then we were working to get them the proper visas and things, because you have to have that. And took almost a whole year. right? But the point of that is the communities know each other. They know each other. So you can draw these lines in the sand. It doesn't change the ability for people to continue to collaborate, communicate with their own, within their own comfort zones. You could call it that. So, yeah.
I can't believe it. I look at you, this beautiful blonde lady, as a colonel in Iraq. Did you have some scary moments there?
Oh, yeah. So we had a facility, this was in 2005. We had, right before I came in, they had taken a small compound, and the ladies that had been working on it, the other captain in front of me, had got approval to make it a women's community center. So it was a safe area because it had walls and it had a gate, and they had refurbished it into it had a daycare center, it had a library, it had a TV room, it had a room that was filled with computers for training, it had all these different things, that these a beauty salon and a school for how to become, and this for sewing and beauticians and all kinds of things. And so we were working on continuing that project. And of course, things got really bad. As you know, in 2005, there was a lot of bombings. And the ladies were even scared to go there. So what happened was I kept pushing to keep it because it was an important space. It had you could have a family day where because they had a swimming pool there, a nice big swimming pool, like Olympic sized pool. And other guys wanted to take it over. And so not our guys, but Iraqi military people, and a bad guy. And I don't remember his name. He was a really bad sheikh. Why did they want it? Because it was strategically located. It was right across the road from the oil refinery, and it was right at the base of what we used to call Fourth of July Bridge, which went from one of the areas right into Baghdad. So the center of Baghdad. So one day we showed up, and there was there was 4 bullets and a writing on the ground, and they were after me. So it was my head, $250,000 to get me. So that was not fun. The only good thing about that story is that so I went back, and we had these guys that would come in all the time. They were special forces uh, gentlemen, and they looked like Iraqis. They would come in a beat up old car, through the gate. And so we knew who they were. So I showed them the picture, and they said, we'll take care of it. And I showed them the picture of the sheikh that was trying to get me. 2 weeks later, I got a picture of them. They caught him, and they'd arrested him. I don't know what happened to him after that, but there was some goodness. I had situations where we went to another area along the river. It was beautiful. It was spring. I'll remember this as long as I live. All the trees were in bloom, so the orange blossoms and the lemon trees and everything, all the almond trees. So the scent along the river was just really beautiful. And on the way back, we got this call from the headquarters that said, "Don't go down this road. Go this way." So we went the other way, and then they called us and they said, "Go back." The bombs went off. So they had set roadside bombs for our team. They were huge. I mean, they were huge. 2 right next to each other that were probably, the craters were probably 6 or 8 feet deep, and they were 10 feet across, in diameter. So we had different situations. Of course, I never told my mother about that one, but she
I
would have.
can imagine.
But so we did have some situations that were really challenging in my first deployment. So second deployment was different. One of the tragic things, or not tragic, but I would say it's tragic for the kids basically, was we were in the Fob Liberty, which is near the airport, is where we did all of our planning cell was. And we took off one day to go into Baghdad to meet with some people. The general was had made an appointment. He wanted me and 3 other people to go along. So we had 2 helicopters, and I have flown 150 times, 200 times in a helicopter. I love it, right? But that day, with the doors were open, and I love flying with the doors open because you can see, right? And we took off from the helipad and we turned left and went over the wall, which there's a school was right next to that area. And we got shot at from the schoolyard. Now, helicopters' sides are paper mache, basically. The bottoms were up armored. They hit the bottoms of the helicopters. Of course, we had to turn and land back down. One of the bullets went right behind my head, and clipped the gas line that went to the rotor. So I could have died. It was like millisecond, not even a second. I could have died. Like it would have gone right through my head. What happened? Right before we took off, I got in the helicopter and I was thinking, the doors are open. I was in the back seat, the doors are open. And for the first time, I thought, they can see me. I don't know why I thought that. And I was wearing a miraculous medal, Mother Mary, and I said 3 Hail Marys. And I swear to you, that's what saved my life. So all of us have had different situations, but
Did you walk around with weapon?
oh yeah, I had everything.
What did you have?
Had a 9mm handgun. I had an M4 rifle. I had all the ammunition, radio.
Wow,
Yeah,
amazing.
pretty crazy.
Amazing.
I look back and I look at those pictures and I think, was that really me? But when you're in it, you just do what you're trained to do, right? So it's the same thing I think for the IDF right now. They're doing what they're trained to do. And you cannot negotiate with these people. You have to I'm going to say this, probably get in trouble for it someday. You really have to crush them because there's no other way. They don't think like we do. They don't think about collaborating. They don't think about good things. If you think of all the money that was spent in Iraq, by Iran and by others that were influencing the environment, and you think about all the destruction, right? And then you say, why not take that money and that time and those people and make something good out of it instead? Um,
This is what we keep asking ourselves all the time.
yeah, I mean, if you think
Yeah,
about the tunnels and all the stuff that was built in Gaza and that whole area, instead of using that money to do that,
sure.
destroy, why not use it to build new schools? Or, I mean, maybe I'm being ridiculous, but you do have to wonder.
No, you are not ridiculous at all. Um,
I mean, it's the
when
same
we
thing.
were not in Gaza for many years already, we left,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's unbelievable,
yeah. This is the
unbelievable.
complexity, right? So it's the complexity of control and money and power and I don't even want to say tribes. It's almost like there's an evil that permeates some of this, and you have to be strong against that. You have to be faithful to God in the way that you never were before. And it's hard to do that, right? But I think that bringing hope to communities and bringing I just think hope is really huge. That is like the hope is what keeps everything else alive, right? Hope. Your hope and your faith keeps everything else alive. And yeah, it's hard to understand some things, but I think it's important. And I want to say something about this whole community that we've been a part of, Edna, that was really influential and is still influential, I think. And that's this whole knowledge. They call it knowledge management, but it's bigger than that. And it's a community that thinks about the future, but also how do you apply it to the present and learns from the past. And I think that's really important for this whole knowledge community to be really aware of. People might have specific skills, like they might do storytelling or they might do facilitation but it's all merged together in a way that I think I haven't seen anywhere else. And I'm part of these different worlds, right? Military or business and this knowledge community. And the other thing that I have seen in this community is they want to help and they want to work with people to make things, to make I don't want to say to make your dreams come true, but to make the beauty of what's in our heads and the beauty that God created each of us to be able to do differently comes together to do something that's, positive. So
Yes, I absolutely agree. It's about knowledge and about wisdom, but the big challenge is what happens when we are in clashing civilizations, in cross-cultural, terrible, terrible situation. And on the one hand, there is hope, as you said. On the other hand, there is all kind of fanaticism.
yes.
And how do you deal with that? Do you have any lessons learned in addition to what you shared so far in terms of um, is there time for hope now, or is it time for crashing now?
A little bit of both, I think. I look at places like Argentina right now, where they had all these different challenges in the country, right? And people pushing for power and control, and all of a sudden you get somebody that wants to free people, right? So free will is really a strong emotion. You can either do it for being evil or you can do it for being good. You don't really, there's nothing, you can do nothing. But free will, you exercise free will. And this clash of civilizations, you've got a, I had one of my instructors for my PhD program was Francis Fukuyama at George Mason. And of course, he and his father studied the whole clash of civilizations strategy or impacts and effects. And you're always edge things and make things better, but there's going to be a time where the clash has to happen. And that's, I think, where we are in a lot of places in the world right now. The clash has to happen. You know, you can't control other people's brains. You can't control their free will. And that's where we are, I think, especially we have more than one situation occurring right now. And yeah, I agree with you.
Wow. Um, I am really very grateful for sharing your stories in such an open way. Um, I I really look forward to collaborating with you in a future work as we have been doing for many years now. I am very happy that you took over innovation, enterprise innovation. We share the same beliefs regarding the power of knowledge and innovation. Unfortunately, sometimes there is a limit to what we can do with
Yes.
knowledge and
Mhm.
innovation, just as you said. I am amazed at your courage and your unbelievable willingness to come back again and again to Iraq. That's something unbelievable. I'm happy that you came out alive out of these terrible situations
Thank
and that
you.
you are here to share with us your experience. And if you want to say anything before we finish, that would be lovely.
So I just want to say thank you again, Edna. And I love our community. We all haven't been together for a really long time. Maybe we should think about that, coming together again, just to break bread together, as they say, and share what's happened since we've all seen each other. But I just want to say, stay strong, keep moving forward. There's an old saying that there's two sayings I just want to close with. One is fear is false evidence appearing real. And the last one is if you keep looking back, that's exactly where you're going to go. So we need to look forward. We need to keep hope alive and just keep working together to make things better. So
Thank you very much and lots of love. Thank
same to
you.
you, Edna. Love you. Take care. Bye.